Welcome to Hump Day, Wednesday, February 12th, 2025. Well, really, coast to coast, the weather is going to be very, very busy for a good week or longer. There's going to be a lot of systems just traversing the country, and they're going to traverse a boundary of Arctic air to the north and much warmer air in the southern plains, and the battle zone is going to create a lot of weather, a lot of winter weather across the nation. Bitter cold will hold for another day across the central and northern Rockies and into the northern plains, with the snow more into the central and southern plains today as the Arctic air mass gets deeper and pushes further south. Good news and bad news for tomorrow and Friday. Temperatures are going to moderate in many areas, but when Arctic air comes off the Continental Divide and gets pushed out east into the plains, we always have that problem where you have some wind. The wind fills in the gap between the warmer Pacific air and the Arctic air moving away. This is always a problem when Arctic air masses come in and then leave. So we're going to have some wind problems along Interstate 80 and I-25 with some blowing snow. So travelers, keep that in mind. Yes, we'll get a bit of a warm-up, but it will come with a lot of wind. So we'll need to watch that. Now, we do see the winds easing a bit because cold air comes back in behind another wave that comes off the Pacific Friday and Saturday. That's followed by another wave that will affect the region from Sunday night into Monday and Tuesday. That's followed by another system late next week, towards the end of next week and the beginning of next weekend. So these Pacific waves are forming in the North Pacific and coming through about every 2 days. And they're riding the Arctic boundary. So this is just a pattern we've seen before. It just causes a lot of winter weather across the nation. Beautiful shot there of some moon activity going on with a full moon from northwest New Mexico, Mount Taylor there near Grants. South Park, Colorado, very, very frosty with the Arctic air mass. Beautiful shot there. It's beginning to look in Montana like a glacier is forming, and there's more snow coming for you folks in Montana. Boy, the script got flipped in Montana really since after the first of the year, and there's really not a ton of relief for you folks up there. From Montana to North Dakota to parts of South Dakota, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, it's just the deep freeze, and it's going to hang. It's going to hang on for longer. So this is going to try to cheer you up a bit. Palm trees. Lake Havasu City, Arizona. Beautiful sunset there, or sunrise, I can't remember. But there's some palm trees for those of you suffering in this situation. But even Lake Havasu City, Arizona is cooling off and will be getting colder in the days ahead. Different satellite perspective this morning. Couple things to point out. Here's the cold air now deep into the heart of Texas, as you can see from the blue here, penetrating just down and east of the Front Range of Colorado into the eastern plains of New Mexico, the Arctic air getting further south. Here's more Arctic air coming into the northern plains and northern Rockies. And notice the jet stream has traveled much further south. Now, this is a characteristic that we're going to watch for the rest of February, and especially as we get into March, to where the jet stream is going to start meandering at times a little further south. That will bring storms further south across the nation as we get into the weeks ahead. Arctic air is just dominating the northern half of the country. When we take a look at where we are, the cutoff of the vortex happening right now, way up near the Arctic Circle. So we have this big oval-shaped area of extremely cold air across North America. The coldest air in the northern hemisphere is here. It's in this area right here. Here are the waves coming off the Pacific and interjecting Pacific moisture into the West Coast and into the flow. And so the interaction between the Pacific and the Arctic is going to continue. This Arctic air mass, though, gets a push from this tomorrow into Friday, and hence the warm-up. But temperatures, the anomaly for temperatures by late this afternoon look like this. So you can see the cold air pushing its way far south. It's even cold west of the divide. The only area of the west that has above average temperatures is the ridge line, the top of the Sierra Nevada. That's why that looks a little warmer there. It's just warmer relative to average because cold air is more dense and sinks. When we take a look at the snowfall for the rest of this current event, it looks like this. So we're just down to flurries now, mostly around eastern Colorado, southeastern Wyoming, western Nebraska. The deeper, heavier snow is going to be now out further east into this area here. But here's the next Pacific wave heading to California. By tomorrow, notice a big shift. Notice the patterns change quite a bit, and the core of the Arctic air gets shifted more to the east. So here is the warmer air pushing up into the region, and hence this is the warm-up. A little bit of a Chinook comes off the Continental Divide, but it's temporary because this guy right here is going to come in, crash the party, so to speak. So this is what we call a transitory ridge of high pressure. It's not going to last much more than 36 hours, but it will cause a lot of wind as it comes through. Temperatures are going to be looking like this by around noon on Thursday, but will be moderating quite a bit by Friday. So look at there's your push of warmer air from that Pacific wave. So you can see what's going on. You might wonder why the South Platte Valley here is colder. Well, put a little bit of snow on the ground. A lot of times the cold air is harder to scour out of the South Platte Valley there. But you can see there's going to be a shift. The day starts off very cold Thursday, warms up by Thursday afternoon, but here comes the wind. These are the potential wind gusts between now and Friday morning. So you can see the wind-prone areas of Wyoming from South Pass to Interstate 80 up to the Estes Park, Rocky Mountain National Park area here, along I-80, along I-25. We've seen this a million times. Here comes the wind. And snow has fallen along this stretch, and it's a very powdery snow, so blowing and drifting. Travelers, watch out for that Thursday and Friday. Winds developing here in California ahead of that next Pacific front, and there it is. So by noon Friday, the ridge is gone, and here comes the next wave. This is going to allow colder air to come back in, and it's also going to bring in Pacific moisture. So it moves quickly. This is by Friday about noon, Saturday about noon. So it's going to come on in, and we're going to go back down with temperature again. Here's the next Pacific wave. They're just forming along this boundary, and that will bring in the next batch. So this is the next batch of moisture that occurs from late Friday all the way through Sunday night, or let's say late Saturday night into Sunday morning. So here's more snow for Montana, significant rain and heavy snow in California, and as we've been advertising, finally getting some action down here with some rain down low and snow in the mountains, along with some colder temperatures. And that's what the snowfall looks like with that next batch, so pretty extensive. When we take a look at the hemispheric pattern, this is looking from space right down on top of the North Pole there. We showed you this last week, this horseshoe of very cold air and a lot of waves forming in that horseshoe. That's a lot of waves in the northern hemisphere. So this keeps the pattern busy. The more waves in the flow, the more stormy the weather pattern's going to be. So that's going to take us into next week, and the reason I bring that up is that by next Tuesday, an interesting pattern evolves. We have a brief temporary high pressure along the west coast, but here's the next Pacific wave. But notice the Arctic air gets stretched out and we get a tail again. And this will be interesting to see if this unfolds. We could have another Arctic tail forming that pushes the bitter cold back into Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and North Dakota and Montana again, and then allows another repeat Arctic push into the nation's midsection next week. I'm not 100% convinced this will come together, but if it does, it's going to end up producing more snow along this boundary where the Arctic air is overrun. More Pacific moisture now comes into the Pacific Northwest with that wave, and the stage is set for another overrunning event where we get a collision of air masses. So this is early next week. This is the early next week situation. Then if we were to animate the temperature anomaly from Monday of next week to next Thursday, you see how the purple is backed up against the northern plains and just kind of stays in the similar spot and actually gets further south into the Corn Belt there and parts of the Great Lakes through the first 4 days of next week. and probably into the end of the week as well, while there's warmer Pacific air kind of pushing up against that. But boy, that is a cold look for the nation deep into next week. And then by next Thursday, that next Pacific wave comes in, brings in Pacific moisture. We have Arctic air that's still basically going to be sitting here. So the interaction between these two is going to create more winter weather. And there's the next batch by late next week and into the early part of next weekend. Now, these are not crazy amounts of snow, but when you're persistently cold and you keep getting light to moderate amounts of snow, it's just going to stack up and pile up. And they're going to see more snow in this part of the world here than they've seen all winter here over the next 7 to 10 days. And if you look at the next week, this is the next 7 days of snowfall across the United States. Quite a bit. And right along I-80 into the Great Lakes, into the Corn Belt, into the southern plains here. So it's going to be a lot of winter across the nation. This is the temperature anomaly for the next 7 days as well. So head to Florida or head to Mexico if you want anything remotely warm. Have yourself a good Wednesday. We'll see you tomorrow.